Well, hi, it's me again. Today's lesson's 4-8 on graphing inverses. Alright, now we'll talk about inverses in more detail in 4-9, which is tomorrow, but for today's lesson we're going to specifically focus on the graphs and how they look and how we find their graph. Okay, so let's start out with a few details first before we get into the graphing. First thing is the inverse of a function undoes that function. Alright, so undoes that function. Now, in most linear functions or other types of functions, we have y equals something with an x in it. Alright, and this is called our input. We put something into this, it goes through the function, and out comes our y. Alright, so we take the x and we return the y. But with an inverse function, you can think of it as one that takes the y, or the output, and returns the x, or the typical input. Alright? And we'll see how that works in just a moment. Alright? The next thing is the graph of the inverse of a function is simply the graph of the original function reflected across the line y equals x. Now, that may look familiar to you. Y equals x, that's actually the parent function of a linear function. So how do we graph an inverse? Well, the steps for graphing a function and its inverse are pretty straightforward. There's 4 steps I'm going to give you. The first step is to graph the original line that you have. If you look down at example 1, the original line is y equals 2x plus 1, so our first step would be to graph that line. Now, when we graph that line, we have our y-intercept, our b, that's equal to 1, so I'm going to put a point at 1. And then our slope is 2, which we'll write it as a fraction, 2 over 1. So I'm going to go up from this point, up 2, and over 1. And then I could also go from this original point down 2 and to the left 1. That'll help us get a better line, okay? So I'll draw the line through that. And there's my line graph, okay? The second step is that you want to label 3 points on the line. Okay, so I'll label the 3 points that I have drawn on here. This top one is 1, 3. This one is 0, 1. And this bottom one is -1, -1. Okay, so those are my 3 points on the line. Now our third step is to switch the x's and y's from our 3 points that we have, graph the second line, and label those 3 points. So I'm going to switch my -1, -1, that's still going to be -1, comma -1. I'm going to switch the 0, 1 to make it 1, 0. And I'm going to switch the 1, 3 to make it 3, 1. And I'm going to plot those points, -1, -1, 1, 0, and 3, 1. And now I'm going to draw the line through those 3 points. And there's my line that runs through those 3 points. That red line is the inverse function. That is my f of -1 of x. The blue line is my f of x. Okay, one last step is for us to be sure to include that y equals x line on the graph. So let's draw that line. If you remember that if the equation is y equals x, that whatever x is, y is also. So if x is 0, y is 0. When x is 1, y is 1. When x is 2, y is 2. Same thing on the negative end. Have those lines going like that. So we'll draw that line. And if you'll notice, our blue line and our red line look like they're just mirror images over that y equals x line. And that's what basically the definition of inverse is. It's the one that flips it over the the line y equals x. So don't forget to write what our fourth step is, and that is to be sure to include the line y equals x, which is the parent function of a linear function. Okay, so there we go. Alright, let's look at the second example. We have the equation y equals -1/2 minus x. So the first thing is, let's graph, minus 1. So let's go ahead and graph this equation, y equals -1/2 x minus 1. So the y-intercept is -1, and the slope is -1/2. Remember, the negative can go in the top or the bottom, but not both. So we'll put a point at -1 on the y-intercept, and then we'll go down 1 to the right 2. We could actually go up 1 and to the left 2 also, and that'll get us our 3 points that we have to write. Let's go ahead and write those points down. I have -2, 0. I have, my son sneezing in there. I have 0, -1, and then I have 2, -2. And I'll go ahead and draw the line through those points. I'm also going to draw the line that goes through my origin, the y equals x. I'm going to go ahead and draw that right now before we get going too much further. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch the x's and y's at these 3 points. So these will be my inverse points, my inverse function points. So I have let's go ahead and fix that. I have 0, -2. I have -1, 0. And I have -2, 2. So let's plot those points. 0, -2. Let's go -1, 0. And we'll go -2, +2. And then we'll draw the line that goes through those points. And there's the line. The red line is the line that is the inverse of our function. So it would be f of -1 of x. That's the inverse of f. And this one would be, the blue one would be just our f of x. Okay, hopefully this makes sense to you. Go ahead and fill out the WSQ, and we'll